Then there was some other incidents. You sent me an article about a jury in El Paso. Basically, you said not to say any names. I'm not.
Well, if they're broadcasted on these videos, that's different because that's public knowledge.
Well, I mean, there was no even gang or club mentioned in a couple of the videos that we saw. Like I said, the young man just happened to be on a bike and was stopped. There was no mention of any name or club at all whatsoever. But I think in El Paso, a jury convicted a man of possessing a firearm because he happened to be affiliated with the Banditos. And so the Criminal Profiling Project, I guess, was posted this article because anybody that's a bandito in El Paso, at least El Paso County, is going to be considered to be violating the criminal statute, which says that it's an offense to intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly carry on about your person a handgun that is owned by a person or under the person's control when that person is a member of a criminal street gang.
Can I ask a question right here?
Yes.
That county made that restriction. Do they have the power to do that? And what determines if a gang is a gang as compared to a club? Because it specifically says gang in the law books, not clubs.
Okay, so the definition of a criminal street gang is 3 or more persons having a common identifying sign or symbol or an identifiable leadership who continuously or regularly associate in the commission of criminal activities.
So the difference is the criminal activity aspect of it.
So you take out criminal activities, and this is essentially any association, any organization for business or personal motives, right, at all whatsoever. And so the only thing that's going to separate, right, a criminal street gang from any church or police officer, fireman association, or the LTC requirements, any even government-sponsored association, is the fact that they've engaged for the purpose of committing crimes. Okay.
For the purpose of people watching this video later, can you give again where you found that law?
You can find that at the Penal Code 71.01. A Texas Penal Code is going to define what a criminal street gang is, but there's a whole lot more statutes that come into play. We're talking about the Code of Criminal Procedure as well as the Texas Civil Practice and Remedies Code. And I worked a lot in college, and then when I first came back, I just happened to have a bunch of cases that I was working on, both for and against city ordinances. And so I was involved in some associations, right, that some legal associations that where we would meet and discuss a bunch of ways for, right, municipalities and counties to cure a lot of problems that happen. Some of them are valid, some of them are great. And one of these big, it was a big push for gang. Even when I worked at the DA's office in Harris County, right, the judge that we routinely went in front of had his own, for juveniles, had his own program for gang affiliates and gang members to basically rehabilitate them. It was a different kind of program. I thought he was a great judge. It was a great program. I really thought it did a lot of good for the community instead of just sending gang members off to the Texas Youth Commission, right, and them learning to get even worse, basically, which is a pretty harsh place to be as a juvenile, right? They could go to this gang program, and it really gave them a lot of opportunities. I think it helped a lot of kids, and that was part of what came out of all of these statutes that maybe we're going to talk about. And so a lot of them have been good legislation, and it's had good results, but we've run into other problems, and some of that is with the orders that allow a court to determine who is a member of a criminal gang, okay, and what exactly the restrictions on them can be. And anybody can bring a lawsuit under a lot of these provisions. What the Texas Practice and Remedies Code can bring a lawsuit. So if you're a mom that has kids that have to walk through from school, an area where they have to go through a pretty bad neighborhood, and there's gang members involved that are trying to recruit your kid, right? This may be a statute you want to look at. And so when you think about that, you think, well, man, this is catch-22 because it's over. Sometimes it's overbroad and it seems to be really unfair, and the restrictions that it imposes seem to be unconstitutional, even though there's not really been a successful constitutional challenge yet. But in other aspects, it's really good for what it provides, because there's not a lot of other ways people would have a remedy, right, to make people stop recruiting their kids and things to that effect. And when you get into those circumstances, it's just a hard call about how to go about getting this done. Well, the legislature cured that by making a very specific statute saying, look, if you have a problem with the street gang right in your neighborhood, you can go to a court and get an injunction. And smaller counties probably, I feel like, should take advantage of this more than they do. There's places where it's obvious, right, criminal activity is happening nonstop. I mean, the only purpose for certain location is to engage in activity that harms the community as overall. Like there's a known spot where drug dealing happens, and the only reason for that spot basically is to deal drugs. And so that would allow, right, you to get an injunction, right, to say that if anybody is caught selling drugs here, right, we can basically shut this place down, right, and anybody that's caught coming here, right, is subject to, right, fines and penalties, right. But that's location specific, see. And so when you start going to individuals, this is when we get into a problem. How do we know that just because there's family members and one of those family members is involved in a gang, right, that the other family members need to be enjoined from doing things such as wearing clothes, going within a gang, what they call a gang-free zone, going or using gang signs, what kind of speech, right, is necessarily prohibited speech. And to give police officers the discretion to determine what is and what is not, right, gang-related speech, a lot of times, in my opinion, is overly broad, or it's at least vague. It gives no what we call guidelines for law enforcement, right, to enforce the statute fairly. Okay, and some of these scenarios are obvious. Other ones, when you get into biker clubs, I think you're getting into problems. Okay, and so that's what we're dealing with today. And we have situations where it's called a public nuisance. The whole point of this is a public nuisance. Criminal street gangs are public nuisances. That's what the legal basis to bring these lawsuits are. Okay, but here, when you're talking about the case I just talked about from El Paso County, we're not talking about the injunction statutes under the Texas Practice and Remedies Code. Okay, for that scenario to happen, you have to have, right, a person be a party to a suit, okay, and then the judge determine in that suit. For instance, if I'm a mom and I have a kid, I have to sue, right, to stop criminal street gang activity, and I have to sue, right, individuals personally, okay, in order to get them to stop. I can't just say, right, all of this certain kind of gang, all members, period, right, are restricted from coming in the zone, restricted from being around during a curfew, restricted from talking to other members, restricted from that. No, I have to name, right, these defendants. I have to name these people, right, and include them, right, in the lawsuit, because they wouldn't know that their rights are at risk in the lawsuit. Okay, and then if they felt like they're not a part of this gang, they could show up at the court and tell the judge, I'm not a gang member. Like, I'm not affiliated with any criminal activities. I don't do any of this stuff. I live in the neighborhood, yes, but I've talked to these people, but I'm not affiliated with them. Okay, or judge, I'm not one of these people. That's my brother is. He's over here, but you've named me as a criminal street gang member, and I have no affiliation to them whatsoever except for my family members. Okay, which would allow a court to say, okay, well then you're not one of these defendants. You don't apply, right? But to say all banditos, period, right? That would be a problem because you have to serve these people individually.
Which would make it odd if you see, let's say, law enforcement pull over somebody and it's not listed as one of those people being sued.
Right, and so law enforcement in a case where, and by the way, violating such an injunctive order is a criminal penalty too. I think it's a Class A misdemeanor. Okay, and so if you violated that injunction, that civil injunction as a nuisance, granted as a nuisance, right, you could then be prosecuted for the criminal offense of violating that injunction. But you would know, you would absolutely know, okay, I've been included in the injunction. I know that this applies to me.
Right.
Okay, and police would have a guideline because they would know this person, this specific individual, named individual, right, is included within the injunction, and they would know they're violating one of these conditions that are within the injunction. To say that all banditos, period, right, are included, right, they couldn't do that. And that's where we get into the problem with the LTC, right, and this criminal statute, the 46.02, okay, where it's just going to say you're a criminal street gang member if you're a bandito, period.
Let me make a quick example, just to make sure I'm tracking with you, and those who are listening are tracking with you. An individual is riding with a vest, he's got a patch on it showing a club that he's with, okay? He gets pulled over by a police officer. If everything goes ABC, correct, the way it's supposed to go, dress right, dress, he's going to find out who owns the bike, who's riding the bike. They're going to cross-check the name with any type of names being sued. And if his name does not come up as a wanted person or anything, he should be considered a normal citizen who's got his LTC and handled in that manner. But if the name comes up and it is one of those, and the person does have an LTC or a gun, then they're totally in violation, could be arrested, can take pictures of their tattoos, so on and so forth, for the records. Is that correct? Did I say it right?
I mean, I don't see why, if they could be arrested, why they couldn't take pictures of the tattoos. But
well, no, the video that we saw, he wasn't arrested at the moment. They just wanted to take pictures, and it looked like it was a profiling instance. So I was trying to say, based on what you said, if his name is not one of the ones being sued, and he gets pulled over by an officer, and it does not show up on the data banks as him being sued, he should be treated normal, not having to take pictures, anything like that, other than checking out his license, make sure he's good to go.
Again, the video appeared to me, and we don't know. I didn't see the beginning. We didn't see all of the end there. But it appeared to me that had been a violation of the Fourth Amendment. You can't just detain somebody to get identification information past that necessary to determine whether you're going to issue a citation. Right? You're right. I can get your driver's license, registration information, check to see if you have any warrants, check maybe to see if you're part of some order,
exactly.
Right? Check on other issues, right, that may come up as initially in the stop, that relate to why I'm being stopped.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And if it doesn't, he shouldn't be taking pictures.
And at the time that they decided, it doesn't even matter though for the purposes of that video, because the police officer said they had already determined they were not going to give him a ticket. At that point, you had to let him go, because under the Fourth Amendment, right, you have to have reasonable suspicion, right? We talked about this. The criminal activity is afoot. Okay, and for purpose of a traffic stop, he committed a traffic violation. That'd have been probable cause one. Okay, but they at least had reasonable suspicion. Okay, there's two parts to the Fourth Amendment, and that's one, the initial stop. Okay, and the other one is the length of the detention. Okay, and so that's what that video, if you go watch it, it quotes some of the Terry versus Ohio language. Right, which means you only have a certain amount of time, which is based on reasonableness, right, to detain somebody to determine whether or not, right, an arrest can be made. In terms of a traffic ticket case, to determine whether or not you're going to write this person a ticket. If you've determined that you're not going to write the person a ticket, right, at that point the detention is supposed to cease, right, and the person goes about his own way, right, goes about his business. Okay, so to detain a person past that point, under the Fourth Amendment, it should have been unreasonable.
That video stinks. It smells to high heaven how it appears. Yes, you're right. We haven't seen the beginning, haven't seen the end. But if you just take that snippet for explanation, what we're trying to explain here, it smells to high heaven how bad that stop was.
Exactly. So, I mean, and I didn't look up to see if there was any lawsuit filed based on the facts of that case. Maybe he felt like getting out in public opinion may have been enough. I feel like that was totally unreasonable. It had the like you said, the stench of a police state, right? Yes. That we have to answer to police just for the fact of where we're going. And I go back to one of the first cases I had of police officers asking, "Why are you going to Oklahoma to see my investor?" Well, why can't you call him? Because I want to go see him. It's none of your business why I'm going there, right? It has nothing. If I want to go to Oklahoma just because I want to go, I don't have to have a reason for that. Right, I mean, I think I was reading I quoted it. Under the 14th Amendment due process clause, right, for vagueness purposes, there was a Chicago versus Morales, right, that basically said that a police officer, whenever he observes someone as part of a criminal street gang loitering in a public place with one or more other persons, he shall order all such persons to disperse and remove themselves from the area. And any person who does not promptly obey such an order is in violation of this section. That was one of the statutes, right, in Chicago versus Morales. Okay, and the Supreme Court shot that statute down. They said it's vague, okay, because it doesn't give law enforcement clear guidelines about how to enforce that. Because who is a criminal street gang, but more likely, what does loitering mean? Okay, and so it says the freedom to loiter for innocent purposes is part of the liberty protected by the due process clause of the 14th Amendment. We have, as the court, we have expressly identified this right to move from one place to another according to one's own inclination as an attribute of personal liberty protected by the Constitution. Woo. Indeed, it is apparent that an individual's decision to remain in a public place of his choice is as much a part of personal liberty as the freedom of movement inside frontiers that is a part of our heritage. Okay, or the right to move to whatsoever place one's own inclination may direct. I mean, I've got a right to go and move about wherever I want to for any innocent purpose. Yes, there is arguments under the nuisance the nuisance statutes that, okay, we're regulating future criminal activity based on current and past activity of a particular person. That's probably constitutional. That's why most of those challenges fail. Okay, I do think that there's going to be some successful in the future as this law progresses, but I think basically, essentially, when they've correctly named a defendant, okay, and they said that this person is part of this gang, and that person doesn't respond, as a lot of those gang members do. They don't show up in court and contest it, right? They don't get a lawyer and say, I'm not a gang member, okay? At least we don't have any cases where they have contested it, okay? But we do have where they're named and said their specific conduct can't do this. That tells law enforcement what to do. The problem,
and I got no problem with that.
The problem with the unlawful possession of a handgun statute is it's unrelated to that. It doesn't say that you can't possess a handgun if you've been named as a defendant in one of those civil cases and there's a current order in place enjoining you and finding that you're a criminal gang member. Okay? That leaves it on the police officer to determine whether you're a gang member or not and whether or not you're involved in criminal activities at the time. Okay, and that's a problem because that would allow a police officer just to see on your motorcycle, you're tatted up, you've got piercings in your ears, right? You've got a motorcycle jacket on that says some kind of club. You've got, I think they call it a 3-piece emblem, right, on the back, which is key to a lot of the motorcycle clubs and was traditionally reserved to what I understand as the traditional outlaw biker gangs, but it's not true today. You can go look up even the Texas Gang Task Force that is part of Texas. It's a national kind of ordeal, but the one for Texas will tell you that there's DPS sponsored motorcycle clubs, and those go from the Blue Knights, which is a national organization with over 20,000 members, right? Some of the largest memberships include San Antonio and Houston, right? And then you have the City Heat Motorcycle Club, Defenders Motorcycle Club, Iron Warriors Motorcycle Club, Renegade Pigs, the Wild Pigs, okay? And there's been several instances where the Iron Warriors have actually gotten into confrontations, right, at motorcycle rallies with the so-called one percenter motorcycle gangs, who, by the way, the American Motorcycle Association said that 99% of motorcycle riders or club members are law-abiding citizens, meaning that the other 1% are the outlaw biker gangs. So there's a lot of people that would call themselves one percenters to say that they're outlaw biker gangs. Well, the outlaw bikers typically traditionally have had the triple piece emblems, and so which are now today the same as the law abiding motorcycle clubs. And so how would a police officer be able to tell the difference between a quote law abiding right, motorcycle rider and club member and a outlaw motorcycle club member. And to think that they can make that determination is absurd.
So if we were to explain the video, I would tell people this. It appeared that the motorcycle rider, who was wearing a black vest with a patch on it and had tattooed sleeves, okay, got pulled over for failure to use a blinker. I think that's what it was. Let's just say that's the case. Okay, I got no problem with the officer pulling the person over, because let's assume somebody says, the officer says to himself, look, biker, jacket, tats, he failed to use his blinker. It gives me an opportunity to stop him and just check. And if he finds out that his name isn't on a list, or he isn't wanted, he's a law-abiding citizen, he's got his LTC, he's got his gun on him properly, then the officer just say, okay, see you later. But in the video, they go further. Like you said, he wasn't getting a ticket, he should have been let go, and then they start taking pictures of his arms. I'm thinking, that's an invasion of my privacy. There's no reason for you to do that. And that freaks me out, to be honest with you.
Right, and so you got to think, even when you're talking about one club, let's say, and I'm going with the Banditos because this was a publicly issued, right, court case in El Paso, and it is so broad that it would subject them to criminal penalties there, and I think that even that is unfair, because let's say the Blue Riders, for instance, the DPS sponsored, or no, that says they're lawful, right, motorcycle clubs, okay, most of which is made out of law enforcement officers, okay, or some kind of public official. You're telling me that not one of those 20,000 something members have committed a crime? I assure you that I'm guessing obviously, but I'm pretty confident that they've at least had one member shoot somebody else or get into some kind of altercation, right, or buy dope, right? Maybe they were, right, excluded from the club after that, but the point is, right, it just because a few bad members do things, right, that are criminal should not make your entire club or organization criminal.
I got a sidebar comment. I was looking at you like a deer in the headlight, because as you were talking, I was thinking of this video clip, and I wanted to ask you about it. I saw a group of guys, military uniforms, military equipment, the whole works, man, but all they had were airsoft rifles and pistols. Is that a gang? They got a leader. They're all in association with one another. They're directed and guided. I mean, can any group like that turn into not just a biker gang, but a gang itself?
And that's what it's going to say. It's going to say that to continuously and regularly associate, right, in the commission of criminal activities.
So technically, because they're having fun, it's not criminal activity. But an officer could say, well, he didn't put his blinker on. Let me just make sure he's not part of a gang because he's in a uniform that's recognizable as a uniform, right? He could have done the same thing with somebody like that.
And he could have. And that's what I'm trying to say. Like, who's to say that your organization is continuously and regularly associating, right, in the commission of criminal activities? I know for a fact that the Banditos do so many community service stuff. I know that I have buddies in these organizations. I know that they do things, right, for charity. I know that they go and do community service events. Right, I know that they do sponsoring and they pay money to other organizations that do community works. Right, so what if 90%, right, of your membership, okay, does good things? Does that mean that because 10% of them still do things that are unlawful, that means that your organization is continuously and regularly associated? Look, I don't really care. It doesn't bother me if you're going to say that one organization is a street gang member or not. Right. What bothers me is that we're letting a police officer make this determination, right, off the cuff. Okay, and what is his probable cause, right, for being able to make that determination? And two, when they're making these orders, they're still not saying all members of a criminal street gang. They're saying these 21 defendants or these 40 defendants, and they'll name these people.
Like, I want to be clear on something. Once again, I'm not hassling law enforcement. I am hassling the rogue, the person who either doesn't know his law or is on the street and wants to do stuff because he's got a badge and his head swells. The few that taint it for the rest. I want to just be extremely clear on that. I'm 100% supportive of law enforcement, military, the whole works. But when I see something so blatantly wrong, I just got to say something about it. So All I'm saying is for those of you in clubs, biker clubs or whatever, and for you in law enforcement, make sure you got your facts right, okay?
And yeah, it definitely something needs to be pointed out. You definitely need to take warning that, hey, if you're going to go to a certain location, you need to know whether that's friendly towards bikers or not. Because if it's not, and you're an LTC member, you need to be on lookout. Hey, this may not be the best place for me to carry a weapon, but obviously it's your choice whether you want to exercise your constitutional rights or not. But we do, I think, have a duty to warn people that this law is in effect, and there have been people that have been harassed by it. And I mean, who knows what, I don't know. I don't think the kid in the video had a weapon, but who knows what would happen if he did have a weapon on him, and it would have been, I mean, extremely.
No, what just got under my skin was them taking photographs after they said they weren't going to give him a ticket.
After they said he wasn't going to give him a ticket, in my opinion, at that point, it was an unlawful stop. I don't even see how you could do
Joel,
that.
If that's a call for us, I'll take it. If not, let it go.
I don't even see how, right, that could, even if he was possibly named in an order, how that would allow them to stop him, right, for...
Hold up a second. I want to see. Is this call for us? No. Okay, go ahead.
And to continue to detain him if they've already have a known identification information on him. I mean, I don't see how an order could require him, right, to be detained longer than what's required in the Constitution for later identification purposes. Okay, possibly, I don't know, that's a case that I don't know yet, but I even think that would be highly questionable. So, I mean, just doing it off the cuff, we've had separation of powers issues. I want to point out they've all failed, but I think they're somewhat legitimate challenges. The courts have said, no, they're not, but I feel like it is a court trying to make a legislative decision about what is and what is not, right, and who is and who is not a criminal street gang member. But even if I can agree that, okay, that's not really the same thing, it's not really legislation. I mean, we talked about, I mean, like bills of attainder, okay, that where I think it was King Henry VIII executed tons of people, right, by saying that they were enemies, right, of the government, okay, and named these people as outlaws, okay. What is the huge difference here? The only difference that makes us not violate that provision in Article 1 of the United States Constitution is that it's a court making that determination instead of the king.
Yeah.
Okay, and so, yes, that maybe we don't have the due process argument there because they can come into court and contest it. But I think that it's a problem when you have a police officer, right, that gets to make that determination off the cuff. To me, that is a bill of attainder.
Okay, look, we're running out of time. I got a special person who wants to ask a question, and then we got to keep it short though because I got to cut.
Hey, Ross, I was wondering, in Afghanistan, during key leader engagement meetings, we would often take pictures of everybody in the meeting so that later on we could build a database and figure out who were the bad guys. Is it quite possible that these cops are taking these extra photos and stuff so that they can create a database?
Oh, they are building a database. That's exactly. There's actually the statute in the criminal code of criminal procedure. It talks about
But that's a violation of Fourth Amendment if you're not getting a ticket or being arrested.
Right, that's what I'm telling you. I don't think they can just stop people just to take pictures of their tattoos and stuff for information gathering purposes that have nothing to do with the stop in general. I mean, when you're talking about identification purposes for reason of the stop, the reason for a traffic stop is to identify that you are a person that's allowed to drive a vehicle. Once they've determined your identity and your identity matches the person that's got a Texas driver's license, right, and they've determined the point of the stop and they've determined they're not going to give you a ticket, at that point, the purpose of the stop is ended. The purpose of the stop is not to take pictures of your tattoos and put them in a database.
But if unfortunately you are arrested, then okay, I'm sorry, you're going to have the pictures taken and then you have to go through the ride.
Right, and that's one thing. And so they absolutely are building a database, and I have no doubts that that's what they were doing in this case. And that's what I'm saying. It has the stench of a police state, like what we're going to be called into question, all the bikers of America, right? Simply because we're falling to this database.
All right.
But even the database says that they're not supposed to produce individual, right, identifying information of an individual into the database. So this was wrong in and of itself because they could not submit this information on this particular individual. It has to be about the gangs in general. And so it has to be about the gang or the group, not the individual. They were targeting this particular individual for some reason. We
I have a
don't.
feeling if you broadcast who you are, how they get a hold of you, you're going to get a lot of motorcyclists calling you.
Well, again,
there.
yeah. So you can, if you got any questions, we do get questions. Email me at benton@watson.legal. That's benton@watson.legal. If you do email me, make sure you leave your phone number so I can call you back. We get a lot of times where I can't call you back because no phone number's left, or you can call me at 254-605-4140. That's 254-605-4140. Make an appointment in Houston or College Station. Again, or come see me at 105 East Main Street here in Cameron. I appreciate you guys having me on. Rick Dodd, thank you for sponsoring.
That's
and
right.
you guys having me on as a
I was
guest.
going to say, Copeland & Dodd Krebs Law Firm sponsors this nice segment, and we're going to take a break, and when we come back, let's take a quick break, Joel. When we come back, we'll have the delicious Janae Goodman. She'll be on recording, so if you don't know it, you wouldn't find it. All right, we'll see you on the other side.